Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we've got a really interesting combo of sources. We've got The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, and then we've also got The Law of One, which is that channeled text.
Yeah.
So we've got like the very personal and then like the big cosmic picture.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And I'm really curious to see how those two connect or contrast with each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
So have you ever felt like life like kind of had its own plan,
Mm-hmm.
even when you were like really trying hard to make it do something else?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like that's what we're going to dig into today. So let's start with the surrender experiment. Singer's whole thing is like actively saying yes to whatever life throws at him, even if it like totally messes up his plans.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, is surrendering like truly an active choice?
Right.
Or is it more about releasing control altogether? And it seems like maybe Singer thinks it can be both.
Yeah, he definitely like puts that theory to the test.
He does.
So he's like living this quiet, meditative life in the woods, and then suddenly he's asked to teach at a university.
What?
Out of nowhere. Talk about an unexpected detour, right?
Huge.
But instead of like being like, nah, I'm good, it's like, okay.
He embraces it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing because that teaching gang actually leads him to a chance encounter with a banker who needs help with, of all things, computer programming.
Really?
And that little event ends up having a huge impact on Singer's life.
It's like that butterfly effect, right?
It is. It is. So that connection with the banker turns into this great friendship. And then all of a sudden, Singer is helping to launch a software company
Get out of here.
called Personalized Programming. And suddenly he's a CEO.
Wow.
It's a great example of how the surrender experiment kind of plays out.
Yeah, and that's one of the big takeaways I got from the book, right? Like sometimes the most fulfilling opportunities, they come when we like least expect them.
Absolutely.
It's almost like by letting go of our own rigid plans,
Mm-hmm.
we open ourselves up to these possibilities that we never even would have thought of.
Exactly. And what do you think? Have you ever had anything like that happen in your own life?
Oh yeah, all the time. There's so many times when, you know, something unexpected happened and it actually turned out to be something amazing.
Like what?
Oh, like that time I was supposed to go on this big backpacking trip, but I sprained my ankle like a week before.
Oh,
I was
no.
so bummed. But then a friend invited me to a writing workshop, something I always wanted to try but never got the time for.
Uh-huh.
Long story short, that workshop like totally changed my career path. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that sprained ankle.
Isn't that wild? It's a perfect example, really. Like life kind of nudging you in a different direction, a better direction even.
I know, it's true. But it's still so hard to just let go of your plans sometimes, you know? Surrendering, it takes a lot of trust,
Definitely.
this belief that things are working out, even when it doesn't make sense at the time.
That's where I think the benefits of surrender really come in. Singer and many spiritual traditions, they suggest that letting go of that need to control everything, it can actually reduce anxiety.
Really?
It increase your resilience.
Interesting. So instead of fighting against the current, you learn to like ride the waves.
Exactly.
That's such a good image. And in Singer's case, like this whole mindset leads him to even bigger challenges, right? His company gets so successful that it merges with another one.
Wow.
And suddenly he's leading this huge team, having to make these complex business decisions.
He's in the big leagues now.
Yeah, but through it all, he keeps using this principle of surrender, trusting that life's going to guide him.
So it's almost like he's conducting this giant experiment with his own life, testing the limits of surrender and just seeing what happens when we truly let go.
It's pretty wild, isn't it?
It is, but I think surrender is, more than just this personal experiment.
That's a good question. I think so. It definitely feels like there's something bigger going on, right? So especially when we bring in the Law of One.
Yeah.
This one might take a little more explaining.
Okay.
It's not your typical book. It's actually a series of dialogues that were channeled.
Handled. Okay.
So imagine like a highly evolved being,
Okay.
an entity named Ra,
Mm-hmm.
communicating through a human channel.
Wow.
Their messages are compiled in this book called The Law of One, and they offer a cosmic perspective on life, the universe, and everything.
I mean, that sounds a little out there, I gotta say.
Yeah, it does sound kind of far out.
But I'm intrigued.
But trust me, the message itself is actually surprisingly relevant to like what we're talking about with surrender.
Oh, okay.
So Ra's central message
Mm-hmm.
is that all is one.
All is one.
Basically, we're all interconnected,
Right.
part of a single unified consciousness.
Okay.
And the purpose of our existence, according to Ra, is to learn,
Okay.
evolve spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
and move closer to understanding this like fundamental unity.
Okay.
What I find really interesting about Ra is their emphasis on free will.
Oh, interesting.
They're very careful to not, like, give direct answers or try to influence events.
Oh, okay.
It's more about offering a framework for understanding the universe and our place within it.
So it's not about giving you a set of rules,
Right.
but about, encouraging you to seek truth
Yeah, from within,
from within. Yeah.
rather than relying on, like, external authorities.
Interesting.
There's actually this one quote from the Law of One that really stuck with me.
Okay.
Ra says, "The universe is one being. When you view another, you viewed yourself."
Wow, that's powerful.
It's a powerful reminder that we are all connected and that separation is an illusion.
Yeah. So now let's think about this.
Okay.
How do we connect Singer's personal experiment of surrender with this idea from Ra of the Law of One, this universal will that connects us all?
Yeah, and is there a paradox in, like, actively choosing to surrender?
Right.
If we are all part of this unified consciousness, like Ross says,
Mm-hmm.
are we really surrendering our individual will,
Right.
or are we simply aligning with a greater will that was already guiding us anyway?
It's a good question. Both the surrender experiment and the Law of One suggest that there are challenges
Oh, yeah, for sure.
in actually putting these ideas into practice.
Yeah.
Surrender isn't just about blindly saying yes to everything.
Right, there's got to be some discernment, right?
Exactly. How do we know when to surrender and
Right.
when to actively go after something we want?
And how do we balance surrender with personal responsibility?
Yeah, if we're constantly surrendering to circumstances, does that mean we're off the hook for our actions?
Another thing that's interesting is how Singer focuses on inner peace and fulfillment as, like, the outcomes of surrender.
Okay.
But Ra seems to emphasize the evolution of consciousness and service to others more.
Right, so like two different angles.
Yeah. Do you think those are ultimately two sides of the same coin, though?
Perhaps. I mean, when you look closer, there's a lot of overlap
Yeah.
between these two seemingly different perspectives.
Totally.
They both emphasize self-awareness
Yeah.
and the importance of seeking inner truth.
Mm-hmm.
They both point toward living in harmony with the universe.
Okay.
Whether that's your own personal universe or the vast cosmic one that Ra describes.
Okay, so we've been talking about surrender, like in a personal sense and in this, like, cosmic sense,
Right.
drawing from the surrender experiment and the Law of One.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually live these ideas? It's easy to get caught up in the big picture, but what does surrender look like in everyday life?
Yeah, that's the real question, right?
Yeah.
How do you take these big concepts and actually put them into practice?
Yeah.
I think Singer offers some good examples in the surrender experiment. He talks about practicing surrender even in those little moments.
Like when you're stuck in traffic.
Exactly. Instead of getting all frustrated,
Yeah.
you just take a breath, accept that you can't control the situation,
Uh-huh.
and maybe you use that time to listen to some music or just be present.
Right, or like when your flight gets delayed.
Yeah, or when your internet's down.
Totally. So it's about choosing to see those, like, little annoyances
Mm-hmm.
as opportunities for practice
Right, exactly.
rather than, like, obstacles.
Yeah,
And the more we practice surrender in those small moments,
yeah,
the better we are at, like, facing the bigger challenges
absolutely.
with grace and ease.
Like building a muscle.
Yeah, totally. And another common thread in both the surrender experiment and the Law of One is this idea of inner peace as, like, a key outcome of surrender.
Right,
Singer describes it as like a natural result of letting go.
yeah.
And Ra emphasizes it as this foundation for spiritual growth.
So it's not about just giving up and becoming passive, right?
Yeah.
It's about finding that stillness within, even when everything around you is chaotic.
It's like learning to ride the waves instead of fighting against the current all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And from that place of inner peace, I think you can access a deeper wisdom, a greater clarity about your choices and actions. Makes me think about meditation, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Which both Singer and Ra emphasize as a valuable practice.
It's like creating space to connect with yourself,
Yeah.
quiet the mind, and maybe even tap into that universal consciousness that Ra's talking about.
Right.
Okay, but what about when we feel called to pursue something, like a dream that we're super passionate about? Is it wrong to go after it with everything we've got?
It comes back to that idea of like right action.
Okay.
It's about aligning your actions with your values, with your deepest understanding of truth. And sometimes that might mean pursuing a goal with like total dedication and focus.
So maybe it's not about abandoning our ambitions,
Right.
but about surrendering to the process,
Yeah.
to the unpredictable twists and turns along the way.
Trusting that even those detours, those setbacks, they might be leading you exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, it's like we're all part of this cosmic dance,
I love that.
learning to move in harmony with the rhythm of the universe.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up on deep dive into the surrender experiment and the law of one,
Hmm.
we're left with this question. Could embracing surrender, with all its nuances and complexities, be the key to unlocking a deeper sense of peace, purpose, and connection in our lives?
It's a question worth pondering, I think. Maybe the invitation is to experiment with surrender in your own way, in your own life.
Yeah,
Notice those moments when you're clinging to control
right.
and just see what happens when you gently loosen your grip.
I love it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep surrendering to the unfolding mystery of it all.